Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again. Request week here at the podcast. Brothers of Metal, The Prophecy of Ragnarok, their debut release from 2017. So not going that far back, although 8 years ago now is seems like an eternity in many ways. Before we talk all things Swedish power metal, how are you, my friends?
Very good. I mean, probably not very good, but regular good. I'm alive.
There's a pulse, if nothing else. Hope I know whenever we cover a power metal album, I know whenever we cover a power metal album, that usually gets you amped up. So I hope you enjoyed the listen this week. I know this was an album that you were very familiar with, me not so much, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But there was some other power metal that actually came out this week that really caught my ear, and that was the new Labyrinth album. This is a band that we've not talked a ton about on the podcast, but they came out with their new release on Frontiers Records, In the Vanishing Echoes of Goodbye, 10 tracks, fast, upbeat, well-produced power metal. Brings me back to 1998, and I just love it. So I'll be there for that. I'm looking forward to listening to this multiple times. That was... It's always nice when I hear new music from Labyrinth. Some of their albums are great. Some of their albums are all-time classics. Others may not be as good, but I think this is one of their better releases, actually. I was impressed by this one.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to receive a promo copy of that, and also the new Ferrymen album, Iron Will, which... I'm looking forward to listening to both of these albums. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but as we've mentioned before, the Ferrymen is kind of like a super group of Magnus Carlsen, Ronnie Romero, and Mike Tirana. And I've really enjoyed, honestly, I got to tell you, I've enjoyed their stuff more so than the other band that Ronnie Romero sings for. I'm blanking on the name. Lords of Black. I've just found that their more recent releases, for whatever reason, have had better production for the first part. I feel like Lords of Black have had kind of inconsistent production in the last few albums. But this, I think, is just a little bit more in the melodic power metal vein, whereas I think Lords of Black are a little bit more straightforward heavy metal, almost like Dio worship, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think that the songs I've just enjoyed the songwriting. I'm a sucker for Magnus Carlsen. He can write the same song 100 different ways, and I'll eat it up each and every time.
He has, and he will continue to do so for many different people, as we alluded to in the our best of 2024 episode, that he, I think, had a pretty big hand in Annette Olsen's solo album from last year. But yeah, those two are on my radar for listening to next week. I only heard one single that really stood out to me this week, and I shared it with you. Let me know if you listened to it. But Heat has a new album coming out called Welcome to the Future. And there's a new single from it called Disaster. I don't have a date on the... Actually, I'll go to the iTunes store. That's where I'll find it.
Welcome to the Future is due out April 25th.
I never quite understood why Heat is not in the metal archives on Encyclopedia Metallum. It's never made any sense to me how these bands that are kind of borderline melodic hard rock for some reason get I don't know, they just are not considered worthy of being on the website. It's an I'd love to know the thought process of why how things get accepted and how things don't. But for whatever reason they're not on there. But anyway, I had learned through a discussion about the new Avantasia album that Kenny Leckremo, who is the lead vocalist of Heat currently and has been since 2020, is also their original vocalist from 2007 through 2010. And Eric Gronwall kind of took his place for the 10 years in between. I didn't realize that he had been in the band and is now back in the band, but I'm looking forward to this album. I feel like they always release really solid albums, and that's kind of become my go-to second genre after classic power metal is that, that Frontiers style. Granted, this is not I don't think this is going to be a Frontiers release, but it's that style of just melodic hard rock / metal that is just really earwormy and just gets stuck in your head and gets your foot tapping and is generally just something that puts you in a good mood.
Yeah, they're a great band. They're remarkably consistent. I'm a sucker for Eric Gronwall. With Kenny back, it's like listening to the old stuff. I guess what's old is new again. But the album is, like I said, due out April 25th on Ear Music. But if I told you it was on Frontiers, you would certainly not say, oh, that's surprising. Like, it just kind of fits. I like that genre too. I think with power metal, there's a little bit of a bloat factor there in the sense that there's so many bands that are doing this style. But as Randy Savage once said, that the cream rises to the top. And in this case, I think that in this genre, it's the same thing, right? The better albums are really, really good despite some of the bloat. And Heat is usually in that mix. I know we've talked about the Crown album recently again. As we talked about Art Nation. I mean, there are some bands that are just stalwarts in this genre. I know that you're still like digging the Eclipse stuff as of late. I look forward to seeing them live again. The album's lost me a little bit, but I look forward to the live set. But say that to say, this Heat album is definitely on my radar, and it's something I'll listen to the week it comes out. No questions asked.
And also in that vein, Dynasty's got a new album coming out this year as well. So
yeah, another
stuff in that area. Yep.
Well, absolutely. I got a few other. I got another album that is not in that genre at all. It's a band that I was recently, I guess, turned on to. I guess with their most recent release or some of the singles leading up to it, it's Harakiri for the Sky. It's like this black metal meets like post rock thing that they have going on. Just different. Like if you're looking for something different, this is it. And I believe they're going out on tour in the not so distant future, in the US. I think they're playing the Gramercy Theater in New York on February 24th. They're going out on the road with Swallow the Sun, which is kind of a cool tour. So, maybe there's a chance they get announced for 70,000 tons before that happens. I don't know, but the band is releasing some really interesting material. Their new album, came out just, I guess it was last week. It's called Scorched Earth. It's 8 tracks, a lot of dense material on this. I mean, a lot of these songs clock in at well over 7 or 8 minutes, some of them over 10 minutes. But it's one of those things that even though it's very heavy and aggressive, there's these melodic passages that kind of suck you back in. And it's something that you can kind of have on in the background and do your work to it. So it's definitely worth checking out. I'll post one of their songs this week as well, but such a far cry from the Ferrymen and from Heat. I just wanted to mention that.
Nice. Variety is the spice of life,
as they say. Anything else catch your ear, or shall we talk about some Brothers of Metal?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I feel like I really caught up on things in our previous 2 episodes. One week was all the singles, 1 week was all the albums, so I think I'm good. Other than those 2 albums that came out on the 24th that we mentioned earlier. I'm feeling good. It's especially after like that 6-week cram session that I usually, let's face it, it's more like an 8-week cram session at the end of the year for I'm putting my list together, which every year I vow I'm not going to, leave it to the last minute. And sure enough, just like high school all over again, I procrastinate, and then managed to get like a C+ or a B- at the end. So that's something's never changed. But yeah, I'm feeling good and caught up and ready to talk about this Brothers of Metal album, which came to us from our friend Amy, who requested it. Had been a while since I think Amy's last request was to cover all of Ad Infinitum's discography, which was 3 albums at the time. And
well, that's why we put this one on the back burner, because we did a 3-for-1 for her last time. So
yeah, well, oh my God, that month I think that'll go down as the most albums I think we've discussed in a 1 month period, because I think we did the Vola career retrospective that month also. Oh, and Beast in Black. So we did 3 retrospectives in like 1 month, and then
haven't done one since.
Yep, and we've had that, and then we talked about the first Halo Effect album and interviewed Milton. So it was a pretty wild month. I want to say it was like July of 2023. So we are kind of back to just sticking to one album at a time. And Brothers of Metal have been around. This album came out in 2017 on April 1st. But they've only released 3 full-length albums in the 7 years that they've been active. And the most recent one came out last year, Fimbulvinter, which I have to admit I enjoyed quite a bit more than the second album, Emblas Saga, which I thought was a little bit disappointing after the debut. I enjoyed the new album quite a bit, but I'll be honest, it came out towards the end of the year, and I think I only had a chance to listen to it just one time, so I didn't really seriously consider it for my list. But that's not to say it wasn't a good album, because I did enjoy it the one time that I listened to it. I just didn't get a chance to go back to it. Anyway, this being their debut album, I'm trying to remember who brought them to my attention. Do you recall how you found out about this band initially?
No.
Was it Amy's request?
it very well might have been. And I say that because I have no recollection of this album coming out. I think I remember Emblas Saga coming out, but at the same time, I don't know if I listened to it. And if I did, maybe I listened to a single. Like, this is a band that I really have no familiarity with. This was the first time I've ever listened to one of their albums in their entirety. And quite frankly, definitely the first time I've listened to one of their albums straight through multiple times. I struggled with this request. Love you, Amy, but this one was a difficult listen for me. I feel like there's certain bands where if they were playing a festival, I would totally check them out live, and I think this is one of those bands. I'd actually be curious to see this act live, if for no other reason than the band has so many performers on this Prophecy of Ragnarok disc that it must just be a sight to see all these musicians on stage. And I'm curious, does it sound good together? Is it a complete cluster? Like, I just don't know what to say. But
there's 8 people in there, yes, even currently in the main lineup. Like, yes, if you look at like the group photo, it looks like somebody went to a Viking festival and did cosplay.
Yeah, it's you're and for all intents and purposes, they may have done that, but when you listen to it, but no, I'm kidding. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but this is the kind of music where I find it a little bit difficult to listen to live. Like, I should say on the album. Like, I'm listening with my headphones. I'm listening on my way home from work. I'm listening at my office with my speakers. And for some reason, there's songs and parts of songs that I really liked. And there's other things that I just was like, it's okay. Like, it's not offensive. I just didn't love it. But you are obviously a bigger fan of the band than I am, insofar as you're familiar with the entire discography. Where would this album rank for you in terms of the 3? Is it your favorite? Is it one of your favorites? And when you went back to it, did it live up to your expectations, or at least what you remembered from the album?
I would say this is probably my favorite of the 3. Although, like I mentioned, I really didn't listen to the newest album as much as I would have liked. If it had come out earlier in the year, I probably would have listened to it more, but it came out on November 1st. And as we harped on, I was incredibly behind at that point, so it really didn't get the attention that it probably deserved. I thought the second album was a bit of a step down from this debut. I remember really, really liking this album when it came out, and then when the first time I went back to it, I might have just been in the mood I was in, but I was just kind of like, oh, maybe this wasn't as good as I remembered. But then I listened to it again and I was like, no, it was me. It's like that scene from The Simpsons where Principal Skinner is trying to find Bart, and he goes to the 4-H club and he's like, there's no kids here at the 4-H club either. Am I that out of touch? And then he just goes, no, it's the children who are wrong. And that's kind of how I felt. I found myself like listening to it again and being like, yeah, it's certainly music that I think you need to be in a particular mood to listen to, because it's very thematic. But if you're in the mood for like kind of like cheesy, like, Thor and Loki and Odin mythology type stuff, and just like real, lift up your mug and sway back and forth and whatever, and then go run out to battle and all that stuff. Like it's quite enjoyable, I think. And, it kind of reminded me of why I liked it so much when, it first came out. And it also felt kind of different. Like, I don't know that there were a ton of bands that sounded like this. And I was so excited. They were brought on to the Prog Power lineup one of the years. I can't remember who they replaced. I think it was during that snake bitten COVID lineup that like got, that was shockingly pretty close to what it was initially meant to be, especially the headliners. I remember being super nervous that like Conception or the Turilli Leone Rhapsody headliners were gonna drop off because there was like 3 years in between the announcement and when they actually played. I think maybe even 3.5 years. And I want to say Brothers of Metal might have been the replacement for Night Flight Orchestra. I'm not 100% sure on that. But for whatever reason, that didn't end up happening. I don't know, maybe getting 8 visas, but had something to do with it. So I don't remember exactly who they replaced, and I don't remember who exactly replaced them, but for a hot minute, I was pretty pumped to see this band live at Prog Power. And, much like the Ancient Bards announcement, prior to that, the rug was pulled out from under me as Milton and Glenn had once dubbed it the Nicchi curse. It's possible that Brothers of Metal might have been the last of my victims. I feel like I've been in a pretty good streak since then, but then again, that was like 2 years ago, so let's not count our chickens just yet.
Yeah, listen, I think there's always the chance that they come back in some way, shape, or form, or come back for the first time.
I'm fairly certain they've never played a show in the States, so
I agree, but yeah. I'm just saying, like, come back in the sense that like they actually play the show that they're supposed to play.
I'm just pointing out that like they're due to play a show in the US. I would be a blast to see them. I'm surprised they haven't linked up with another band or whatever as an opener.
Probably because it would take 3 tour buses to get them on the road, but I digress. As we mentioned, a lot of members here. I'm going to just name them briefly just to put them on the record, and then we'll get into the album. Emil Warmetal, I would be shocked if that's his real name, but that's your bass player on this album, Emil Warmetal.
If that's his real name, he was born to be in this band.
100% accurate. David Gran on guitars, Par Nilsson and Michael Farm on guitars, Ylva Eriksson, who does the lead female vocals, Joachim Lindblad Eriksson, no relation, also doing vocals, Johan Johansson and Mats Nilsson on drums and the other vocalists respectively. Quite the robust lineup here, to say the least. The album itself, Prophecy of Ragnarok, kicks off with the death of the god of light. This is a straight up power metal tune and a really good opener for the album. I think that it's a blend of vocals here, which are rather interesting. And the lower end of Elia's vocals remind me very much of Nora from Battle Beast. I think there's a real similarity in the way that they kind of put their vocals on this stuff, mostly because it's in a lower register. This is not like mezzo-soprano vocals or anything like that. And when you combine that with the male leads, which sound like Peavy from Rage, it's kind of an interesting mix. I'm not a huge fan of his vocals. I actually prefer hers 10 out of 10 times, but together it oddly works, and they play off each other quite nicely. This is one of the better songs on the album. It's upbeat, it's catchy. I think it's a good opening tune.
Yeah, I mean, well put. I agree with you. Like, I don't know that I'd want to listen to an entire album of those type of male vocals, but the when they're mixed together, it really makes for this really nice dichotomy of sound that I think really works well. I think that she's got a wonderful voice. I don't know if I hear a ton of Nora, but I definitely get the comparison. I feel like she's a little bit smoother than Nora, but I just remember like listening to this and thinking, wow, this really works. And so many bands, I think, since Nightwish really started to showcase Marco's vocals, I think a lot of bands have started to go into that, Beauty and the Beast, so to speak, direction. Epica is a big one that I think has I feel like they've over the years kind of they've kind of like lessened Mark's involvement in the vocal process and focused more on Simone. But in the early days, it was almost, I would say like 60-40, maybe 65-35. So this was, it's been done. But, in a Norse mythology sort of theme, maybe not. Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe someone could point out something that I missed, but I remember at the time it feeling pretty unique, and I think the first track it just gets right down to business. Just it kicks right in with like double bass drums and heavy guitar riffs, and it just I think it makes for a short but good example of what you can expect from a lot of the rest of this album. I think it's a really solid intro. But I will say, like, if you find like, songs about Norse mythology, like a little bit corny or cheeseball, like this probably isn't going to be your cup of tea. But if you can kind of look past that's kind of the gimmick of the band, and Jesus Christ, go watch some of their music videos if you really want to see some fun cheesiness. It's, cheesy for all the best reasons, in my opinion. But yeah, this is a really good way to kick things off, and I just like this. I like this song a lot. Your thoughts on Son of Odin? What I would think to be a significantly different sounding song than the opening track.
Son of Odin has a very different cadence to it overall. It's very slow. It's almost like a march. And the verses are a little bit generic, featuring just the male leads. But there's this peculiar sound of a forge in the background, which shockingly fits the music very, very well. I prefer the chorus though. I like the dual lead vocals. It's a bit repetitive. And I think it definitely fits the Viking motif with the overall sound of this song. But it's a bit repetitive, and the spoken word part towards the end is a big miss for me. I much prefer the spoken word parts on Dawn of Victory when we were talking about Rhapsody last week, and that's very cheesy too. I just think it's a little bit better produced than what you hear here on Son of Odin.
Yeah, that's fair. The beginning of the song makes me think of like one of those old mid-tempo Manowar songs, where it's just like you're waiting for Eric Adams to just start singing about something really epic. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's about like motorcycles or as they call them, horses made of steel, or leather and chains. I don't know, whatever seems, cool in Auburn, New York at that moment in time. But, I think it kind of, once the song gets going, I think it starts to have a little bit more of its own kind of vibe. But that beginning part really reminded me of one of those like marching type Manowar tunes. So yeah, this one, yeah, I definitely prefer the faster paced, like heavy power metal type songs to this kind of song. So it goes without saying that I enjoyed track 1 more than track 2, but I also appreciate that not every song is just the death of the god of light over and over and over again. The songs really have their own type of their own uniqueness and type of appeal, and it makes me laugh that there's a lyric in the song that goes Loki is my brother, he has no sex appeal, which I think a lot of fans of Tom Hiddleston would probably disagree with, but whatever. It's an odd lyric, but here we are. Manowar is kind of like the Norse mythology, or I should say the like upstate motorcycle wearing guy's version of Norse mythology metal. So like it makes a lot of sense. And if memory recalls, like Manowar sang songs about Norse mythology, probably more so in the earlier years, but like didn't they have an album literally called like Sons of Odin or something like that? So, but yeah, that makes sense. I kind of forgot about that because I always like kind of focus my Manowar love to like this very small chunk of time from like 1987 to 1992. And I feel like there wasn't as much of that, that kind of mythology thing I feel like they did that in the early days and then they brought it back in the later days, but I don't know. I'm just babbling at this point. But Prophecy of Ragnarok, which would be the title track. I'm just going to come right out and say it. This is my song of the week, man. This song is an absolute banger. It starts out just like balls to the wall. I had kind of forgotten about this song, and literally as soon as I heard it for the first time in forever, I was like, holy shit, this song is such a banger. Everything that this band does well is wrapped up in one like under 4-minute package, like just epic choruses with the layered vocals, like just this fast chugging guitar riff that just takes you through the whole song. The drums are just like double bass galore. You have like my only complaint about this song is I hate how abruptly it ends. Like it just, I feel like there could have been the chorus could have been sung one more time. Like it's such an infectious and memorable chorus. Like they could have snuck that on at the end, but I feel like it ends with a whimper and not a bang. But I mean, I feel like it's a small criticism. I think the song is awesome. And, I remember being one of my favorites when the album first came out, and it's still one of my favorites. And, this was one of those rare instances where like the song of the week was like my first listen. I was like, yeah, this is it. And I haven't wavered from that. And so here it is. We'll listen to it for a bit. And then I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the title track from Brothers of Metal's Prophecy of Ragnarok.
This is a really interesting choice for Song of the Week. Faster, a little bit of a cleaner sound, straight up power metal. I'm not surprised at all why you like it. And although I'm not a huge fan of the male vocals, I do like how they share the vocals on this particular song. The chorus is the real winner here. This chorus was a total earworm for me, and I think it's a lot better than the kind of generic verses that lead into them. The bass lines aren't spectacular, but that chug of the low end really pushes this song along, and I totally understand why you'd love it. Like, it makes perfect sense to me, and I think I would have put it up there as one of the ones that you might have selected, so I'm glad you did. It's obviously not my song of the week, but it's definitely a good choice.
Yeah, and I'm like super curious what you did end up choosing. There are definitely a handful of other songs on here, which, I mean, this wasn't like a complete runaway. There's a lot of really good songs besides this. This was just the one that I think really, I mean, as nostalgic as one can feel about 8 years ago, this one really kind of made me feel nostalgic for 8 years ago. So, good stuff. Let's move on to concerning Norns.
Well, actually, before we get to
Defenders of Valhalla. My bad.
Yeah, we skipped Defenders of Valhalla, Defending Valhalla, which is actually was definitely a song of the week candidate for me. I think it was the best song up until this point on the album. It's a really folky tune, calls to like Elevati or something in that vein. It reminds me of like Elevati meeting Dropkick Murphys, which is, if you don't believe me, go listen to the song. Really,
no one's ever said that before. I can guarantee it.
I don't know that anyone will ever say it again, but like I said, go listen to it if you don't believe me. I think the lyrics are kind of cheesy, but the song itself is pretty good. It's got like these generic riffs, but the interplay between the singers and the riffs work so well together. The chorus actually reminded me a lot of Freedom Call, which is never a bad thing. Just like an upbeat chorus, very bright, very cheery. And I thought this was just a really enjoyable tune. And as we moved into the album, and I'm starting to enjoy some of the songs more, it was a really good sign, because like this was one of the better tunes, I think.
Yeah, I like this one a lot too. It just has like a really kind of upbeat and fun. Like it's interesting because like these stories of Norse mythology are really a lot about like battling and war and like kind of like things that you would consider to be negative, but like the way that they make it, they present it in a way that makes it seem like really fun and upbeat and so I guess you don't have to feel too bad when like people are like shooting like, you know, lightning out of their hands and shit like that. So like it's not too close to reality, I suppose. But yeah, this one just has like all those just fun kind of folky elements to it that I think work, and I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed this one.
I have to ask you though. You mentioned this next track concerning Norns. What's a Norn? Like I don't
know.
And what's
feel
so
like,
concerning about them?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we need to ask Zornheim if maybe it's short for Nornheim. I feel like this is where our knowledge of Norse mythology might be failing us. But I'm going to do the thing that you do in 2025, and I'm going to Google it. And so tell me your thoughts on the song, and I'll try to find out what the hell a Norn is.
This is kind of an interlude track. It's got like a spoken word element to it, if you will. It's under 2 minutes. It's about 1 minute and 40 seconds. Really heavy on the cheddar. In my opinion, it's really just kind of an intro track to Yggdrasil.
Yep. And now that I've done a little bit of research, it actually makes a lot of sense for this to be the intro song to Yggdrasil. I've always struggled saying that word.
You and me
they
both.
Don't help by spelling it with a YGG.
Buy another vowel, would you please?
Yeah, my God. The Norns are deities in Norse mythology responsible for shaping the course of human destinies. And one of their says, besides the tending to Yggdrasil, Old Norse sources attest to Norns who visit a newborn child in order to determine the person's future. These Norns could be malevolent or benevolent, bringing tragic or beneficial events respectively. I have to assume, based on the title of this track, these are not the benevolent ones.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, thank you for that. It's a little Norse mythology lesson for us all. What are your thoughts on the interlude itself?
It's fine. Like you said, it really, I think, is meant to just be a connection between the two tracks before and after, or even just kind of a break. Cause I think Prophecy of Ragnarok and Defenders of Valhalla are two kind of like high energy songs in a row. So this is kind of a way to, I think, slow things down before we go to Yggdrasil, which is kind of ballad adjacent. It almost has kind of like an arena. What's that word I'm looking for? Arena anthem kind of vibe to it. If there was like a music arena in the Norse mythology, the Colosseum, if you will, where the band was playing, like this is where like everybody, lifts up their steins and celebrates. I really like this song. Like it's totally different from like Prophecy of Ragnarok in that it does have that kind of mid-tempo, march-like pace, as we mentioned in Son of Odin, but this one I think has a little bit more of an emotional vibe to it. So I always really liked this song, and I still do.
I thought that the key word, and you actually took the words out of my mouth, was emotional. The vocal delivery here has this emotional feel, and it almost starts off like a ballad. It's short-lived. I think it only lasts about a minute or so, and it really picks up with that first chorus. It's not the heaviest of songs, but it definitely it begins to pack a punch with that first chorus, and it really just kind of gets heavier from there. It's not my favorite song. I think it's fine for what it is, but I definitely get that emotional vibe that you alluded to just moments ago. Whereas like Tyr kind of hits me with that intro right away. It's upbeat. It's a call to battle. It has a Sabaton vibe to it, which I thought was really prevalent on this track. The low end bass is kind of simple, but it's very powerful. The issue with with Tear for me was the repetitiveness. It's kind of remedied though by the fact that it's a very short tune. It's got a catchy chorus, a nice little bass solo, which was completely unexpected. And I thought it was actually one of the better tunes despite its repetitiveness because it doesn't overstay its welcome, right? Like the song's 3.5 minutes, a shade over that. You're in, you're out, and you're on to Siblings of Metal, which I'll get to shortly.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, so far, with these first 6-7 tracks, like, I feel like we're definitely seeing a lot of variation in what could have been a very non-varied album based on the subject matter. And so I think the fact that they've really made some songs that really stand out from one another, just the way that they're constructed and the way that they sound is really kind of cool. And I think Tear kind of, I think sticks to a bit of the more, it's a little bit faster than I think the previous mid-tempo songs, but it's still fairly mid-tempo. But man, I really love that, those guitar riffs at the beginning of the song that kind of like open things up. It's like the opening ceremonies of the song. This is another one that just feels kind of, very like anthemic. I feel like when the songs aren't fast paced, they have more of an anthemic feel. And in all honesty, like a lot of power metal bands that write songs like this, like it can be tricky to kind of keep people listening, like to still have those hooks and still have those catchy choruses, without the speed. And I think Brothers of Metal are really good at making interesting mid-tempo songs not feel like you're waiting for the next, Eagle Fly Free or whatever, something just like that you can enjoy even if it's not a face melter, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I can certainly see the appeal with that. You alluded to Manowar earlier, and when I think of Manowar, I think of articles of clothing and their relationship to metal, right? Like gloves of metal, boots of metal, loincloths of metal, whatever it is with metal.
Sleeves of metal.
Yeah, exactly. Like tuxedos of metal, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not talking about a Canadian tuxedo, okay? Like I'm talking about whatever. Anyway, I digress.
Manowar's more likely to wear that than a real tuxedo.
Also true. But what Brothers of Metal does is they lean into the whole familial element of metal. And so this is Siblings of Metal, and the name itself was enough to make me not want to listen to the song. I literally didn't want to listen to this. But the song itself has a happier vibe to it, again, hearkening to Shades of Freedom Call, filled with trumpets and this big, like, anthemic quality to it, I guess. The verses are kind of interesting. I like the little guitar noodling during the verses. I think the chorus is actually one of the best on the album, and it was shocking to me that this was a Song of the Week candidate, given its name. But I'll be damned, the song's a bit of an earworm, and I kind of liked it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I always was wondering if, like, when the band started, it was an all-male group, and then they brought on a female singer, and they're like, well, shit, we're called Brothers of Metal. Maybe we should write a song that's a little bit more inclusive to our sister of metal, Ilva here. So I feel like this feels a little bit more inclusive. I always thought it was kind of ridiculous that there's a band called Brothers of Metal with a female in it, but it might again be maybe that's how they spoke in the Norse tradition. I have no idea. Whatever, like we're all brothers. Whatever. That said, yeah, this is another song. It is kind of a silly title, but it is a catchy tune. Agreed 100% on the strength of the chorus too. This band writes a killer chorus, and this song is no exception. So interesting. Yeah, we're more than halfway through, and I'm still like eagerly anticipating your song of the week choice. So let's carry on to Gods of War, which I also think was a later Manowar album or EP or single or song or something at some point.
We're low on originality, but this is another good song. Definitely not my song of the week, but pretty good. This again, 2 in a row that just screams Sabaton to me. If Sabaton were to play this song live, I don't think I would even blink. It would just feel like it's part of their set list almost. It has to be an influence from them. And obviously being from Sweden, I guess it's not terribly surprising. This song has a really nice gallop to it. It's quite catchy. I enjoy the chorus quite a bit. I think it's been done 1,000 times before, but listen, this is when it's well done, it's well done. And what I think stood out to me most about Gods of War was the bridge, which is kind of just a stripped down version of the chorus itself before going back into the full chorus. It's an interesting tune, a good song. I would say one of the mid-range tunes on the album.
I feel like this is one of the songs that probably is way better live. Like, it probably is so much fun. Like, I'm picturing the Prague Power group with all the inflatable swords and just like everybody kind of having a blast. And I feel like some songs just sometimes translate better to a live medium, and I feel like this one might be one of them. I think it's a solid tune, but again, it's just another one of those kind of like mid-tempo march type gates, if you will. But again, rather than have one banger after another, so to speak, or as Seamus would say, banger after banger after banger. It's really, I think, I feel like this album is incredibly well paced, which, we've talked about in the past as far as song order and pacing and stuff like that is not always even some of the masters of their genres don't always pace things that great. And I feel like this is a really well paced album. And again, I feel like the last two tracks, Tear and Siblings of Metal, had a bit of a kind of a faster, heavier pace to them. And then Gods of War, I think, kind of reins it back in again.
Yeah, well said. And what I noticed, and I don't think Freya is any exception, the middle of this album for me was where the really scored its points. There's just a run of songs in the middle here that I thought were pretty good. Freya is a song where the female vocals in many ways dominate the song. So right off the bat, when I noticed that, I was kind of into it. I like some of these drum fills. I thought the verses were very engaging. But the chorus was another catchy one, which would, to your point from earlier, this would be another one of those songs that if I heard live, I think would be a crowd favorite. I love the contrast between the big symphonic elements of this song and then the more basic verses. This was a song that stood out to me the first time I listened to the album. And it was the song that every time I heard the album, I looked forward to listening to this particular track. And so for that reason, taking the mystery out of it, Free is my song of the week. Let's give it a listen, and then I want to hear all your thoughts.
A tear of gold is shed by the priest is so true. With her band of sisters, she will conquer all her enemies will fall. Within the darkness, comfort find. Within sorrow, your heart bound. In her tears of red gold. Her lover gone through night and through dawn. Missing far at sea. In a feathered robe, she ventures forth. Her beloved to set free.
So, Chris, talk to me about Freya. Like I said, to me, it was I don't want to say a clear song of the week, but it was a song that I definitely kept going back to and enjoying. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
It's not one of my favorite songs on the album, I'll be honest. I think it's good. It's definitely got, I think, a little bit more of that deliberate kind of almost ballad like vibe to it. Makes me think of Freya, the character from Final Fantasy IX that I think joins your party towards the later part of the game. Man, I got to go back and play that game. Sidebar. But yeah, I think this is another one of those just anthem type songs that the band does so well, and yet, like you said, I think would be really welcome in a live environment. I'm not going to lie, I would really love to hear them just play this whole album start to finish live, because I feel like there's so many different types of songs and so many like it's kind of like a roller coaster of song types and speeds and tempos and stuff that it would be really cool to see live, especially like you said, with all 8 people on stage. Might feel a little crowded in some of your smaller venues. Wacken probably would be a nice stage for an 8-person band, I would say. But yeah, it's a good choice, and I'm not sure I would have guessed that for you. It's honestly it's probably one of my least favorite songs on the album, but I really like this album, so that's not really it's not really a fault at all. It's just
different strokes for different folks, as they say. What I can tell you with pretty definitiveness, or definitiveness behind it, the next track, the Mead song, was not ever going to be my song of the week. This song has Ailstorm written all over it, right down to the title and the theme. And correct me if I'm wrong, but don't the lyrics start off with death, mead, and a goat? I mean, like, what are we talking about here? That's really all I have to say about the lyrics.
This is the greatest lyric intro to a song ever. It goes, "This is a song about death, mead, and a goat. The Einherjar's final preparation for Ragnarok. Welcome to the land of no hangovers." Take me to that land, Justin. Take me to that
land. It's a fun song. Don't get me wrong. It just doesn't really do much for me. I think Ailstorm is better at doing those drinking songs than Brothers of Metal is. There's some screams though, with some of these higher, I'll just call them screams from the female vocals. It reminded me of Brittany Slays from Unleash the Archers, with some of those, just the way that some of those notes are belted out. That was cool. The song itself, I could take it or leave it.
That's a really great comparison. I appreciate that's 100%. I just, oh man, I'm sorry, but just like mead, another, like, I kind of not love that. It's great. I like it's, it's
as we record this at 11 o'clock in the morning, you're ready to grab your flask and
I know, but I like it. It's a bunch of people that know what they want, they know how to ask for it, and they know how to ask for it again. And I appreciate that.
And they don't hold any punches. They're very direct with their request.
Yes, exactly. Mead another. Thank you. Into the mist, the she-goat will us lead. I mean, you have to kind of,
embrace it,
you got to come into this with an open mind, especially if you're going to really unpack all these lyrics. But I think it's a fun song. Another one that I think would be a blast live. Probably not one of my favorites on the album, but it's fun. I remember going back and listening to this for the first time this week and looking at the track listing and being like, oh boy, I don't remember the Mead song. I wonder where that's headed. And it pretty much headed exactly where I thought it would, like just super like cheesy lyrics about drinking, like you said, like nothing we haven't seen from Ailstorm and Korpiklani and all of our favorite folk metal bands that like singing about drinking. But it's fun. One of the things I really like about this album is that it's really well produced, and I think that's important when you have that many people performing on an album, because you have 3 guitarists and 3 vocalists, and there's a lot happening. And but I feel like the drums don't really get lost in all that, which is great. Like this, I think this track in particular has really strong drumming, and the drums sound really crisp and clear. Yeah, it's a pretty good song. I think it's fun, and again, yeah, it'd probably be way more fun when you're having a little bit of a buzz going and you're watching the band live and praying that you are also living in the land of no hangovers. Yeah,
really. That's pretty funny and very well said. I think they redeemed themselves in many ways with their next track, Sleipnir. Really intriguing guitars at the start. That gallop is back in the verses. And while I don't love the male vocals on this particular track, I like the cadence of the song. I think it's the best chorus on the album. The chorus on this track is absolutely outstanding. The female vocals plus the double bass drums, I'm all about it. This has another song that has that Unleash the Archers vibe, not just in the vocals, but the song itself. This was one of the top 3 songs on the album for me. I like this one a lot.
This was probably my runner-up for Song of the Week. Yeah, the chorus is so catchy, so good. I don't know that I have much else to add from what you said, but I just think that this song is so good, and I love that it's towards the end of the album, because I feel like the 2 strongest songs for me are one's towards the beginning, one's towards the end, and I think it helps also with the balance of the album too. It would have been it would have been, I think, a disservice if they had placed this track earlier on, and then there was like the album was too top heavy. So I think this really balances out nicely. But I like everything about this song, and it's another one of those really just upbeat, fun power metal tracks. And I think you also get a nice a bit of keyboards on this song too, which I don't feel like you get a ton of throughout the album, because I think that they are going for a little bit more of like a medieval kind of sound. And so I feel like a lot of times that means that it's a little more basic, and so there's not as many keyboards, but this has some really fun kind of keyboard like riffs going on in the background. So I appreciate that a lot. We all know my love of anything keyboards, and this is also, it happens to be the shortest track on the album, not counting the concerning Norns, which I'm still very concerned about. But yeah, this is like a really in and out kind of tune, and yeah, this is one of those songs I absolutely forgot about and was really pleasantly surprised to hear again and be like, yeah, this was a good one. I kind of slept on this song I slept on Sleipnir for 8 years, but it's back. I might have to throw this into my next Play the Old Shit playlist, because this is just a real banger.
I'm going to give you the option right now. Do you want to change your song of the week?
No need.
You're talking with such praise that I would think you were getting cold feet for a second. I didn't know that would have been a first, right? Changing the song of the week. We haven't done that 248 episodes in, so.
Maybe that'll be our second half of our first 500 episodes. We'll just start throwing all the rules out the window and just going ape shit and not really caring. No, I mean, honestly, it's runner up. Prophecy of Ragnarok, I just have more memories of, and so it gets the nostalgia vote, kind of puts it ahead. But two very excellent songs for sure.
So we got 2 tracks here left, and although the tracks are short, and although I enjoyed some of these tracks, I think that by the 3rd or 4th listen of the album, I was kind of ready for it to end a little bit at this point in the listen, just because it was so many tracks. Fire, Blood, and Steel, the penultimate track, is not a bad song. It's just kind of more of the same. It's very heavy and almost has a Manowar vibe, not just because of the title, but because of the song itself. The verses come off very angry. I think it's like an angrier song, whereas the chorus, I think, is a little more accessible, but a little more pedestrian. I have a bit of a lukewarm feeling about this one. It's definitely not one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we kind of reached the point where we get what this album's all about, and it's I mean, I think I would have been totally okay with the last track being like the end of it, but you know, I think there's the album ends with like 2 solid tunes, but I definitely don't feel like they're ending with their strongest material on these last 2. But again, like, I don't think I don't dislike any songs on this album, if I'm being totally honest. I just think some are a little bit better than others, and at least as far as Fire, Blood, and Steel goes, it's this one's kind of more in the average song for me on this one.
Do you prefer the final track, We Believe in Metal, or do you prefer Fire, Blood, and Steel?
I prefer the last song, just because it feels like a last song. It almost has like a closing credits kind of a vibe to it. Like, you know, like we're wrapping things up. And, I mean, it's not like I said, like Sleipnir would have been a good choice to end things on as far as like ending strong. But I also think this song sounds more like a last song. And I think that it really kind of, to take a page out of your book, puts a bow on this album quite nicely. So
I actually didn't love this as a closing track. It starts off with this like Viking intro, this dark and brooding sound. And when I hear them talking about wimps and posers, again, I think about Manowar. I think the nods here are not mistakable at all. There's a bit of a slow build quality to this song, and there are parts of the song that I enjoy, but when you put it all together, it seems kind of forced or just kind of cut together. I think that Slipnir would have been the better song to close the album, and I would have just left the last two off. I don't think the album needed the extra songs. I think it was a little bit of bloat, and I just think that they should have gone out on a high. I don't hate the song. I just didn't think it was like the best way to close the album. I think I would have closed it with something more upbeat.
Yeah, that's fair. I kind of look at it as another one of those like anthemic kind of like sing along type of tracks that I think would make for a really cool way for the band to wrap up a live set. So I don't think I'm as down on it as you are as a final track, but I definitely could understand being at like the 45-minute mark of this album and being like, all right, I think I've gotten my fill of this style. So completely, yeah, totally understandable. So
I think that all said, let's hear your score from 1 to 10. I think this is interesting. I'll even lead. Like I said, I didn't think this was a bad album or anything like that. It's just maybe not my go-to style. I want to see them live. I'm also not clamoring to hear their new album, but it was fine. Like, it was very much, I think it was like the consummate, like, average album. I'm going to give it a 6. It wasn't bad. There were some songs I really liked. There were others that I'm like, it was fine. It's a solid release for me, but I think that because of your power metal tendencies, I'm sure you're going to give it a higher score than I did.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where like it kind of grew. My score kind of grew throughout the week. And then it kind of grew back to where I would have guessed it would have been before I had started listening to it again. It was like, in my head, I was like, this is an 8.25. Now let me go back and listen to it. And then I was like, oh, maybe this is more of like a 7.5. Then I listened to it again. I was like, it's probably like an 8. And then discussing it with you and re-listening to it as we were talking, I landed right back at 8.25 again. So that's where I'm going to stay. And, really, this was like one of those albums that I don't know that I would have thought to go back and listen to it again. And I'm glad that Amy requested it because it gave me a chance to listen to it again and kind of appreciate it. Because I remember liking it so much when it came out, and maybe just the lukewarm reception I gave the second album maybe kind of made me put these guys on the back burner in my head. And I'll tell you, a lot of times when I get excited to see bands at Prog Power and they inevitably don't play, I go through like almost like a mourning period where I don't want to listen to them because it makes me sad. So that might have been part of it too, but I feel like I've kind of have a newfound appreciation for this band. There's literally one review for this album on Encyclopedia Metallum, and the closing line is fabulous, and I kind of want to finish my thoughts on this album by quoting the reviewer Nero Zed, who gave this album an 86% and titled his review "Silly Power Metal for Fans of Power Metal." But he ends his review by saying the following: "The takeaway from this review should be that if you like cheese, have a sense of humor, and like a band you could sing along to, Prophecy of Ragnarok is for you. Admittedly, the band leans into some pop tropes that could alienate more than a few metalheads who are more casual in their affinity for power metal. If you don't like a good chorus that any drunken Viking could sing in a bar regardless of vocal talent, then this is not for you. This album is a perfect offering for lovers of campy nonsense, and Brothers of Metal should not disappoint any such fans. Solid B+ from me." So
I think that's extremely well said. I think that is a good way to kind of move on from Brothers of Metal, but I'll say this. I wouldn't be opposed to covering them again. It wasn't like I had a struggle with this or anything like that. It was just something different, and I'm glad we got to choose it, because had Amy not selected it, I definitely would not have listened to this album. So it served its purpose.
It made for a good reminder that I really need to go back and listen to their latest album again, because like I said, I remember liking it, and I remember being pleasantly surprised because I didn't love their second album. And you know what? Like I reached a point before we recorded our best of 2024 episode where I threw my hands up. I was like, I think I've done everything I can do at this point. And, I feel like the difference between 35 and 55 is negligible. So at this point, it is what it is. Maybe the next time they release an album, I'll pay closer attention to it. But sometimes those late, end of the year albums, sometimes we don't hear them until the following year, and sometimes we don't hear them enough because they came out late in the year. And so, it's unfortunately, it's just the way that it goes. But like I said, it's a good reminder to go back and give that new album a listen. I do remember there was at least one single that did not thrill me, so that might have also been why I was kind of surprised at how much I enjoyed the album itself. But again, I didn't feel right putting an album in a top 50 list I only listened to once, so I didn't.
Makes sense to me. Got a couple of news items, really 3 news items from 3 bands that couldn't sound any more different. So if you like variety, here's variety. Behemoth is set to release their new single Wednesday, January 29th. So by the time this episode drops for our non-Patreon members, Behemoth will have a new single out. It's called, and I'm not making this up, The Shit of O.V. God. No idea what that's going to sound like, but I have a feeling it's not a ballad. So there's new music from Behemoth. I know that they have some touring plans set for later this year as well. So something to definitely keep an eye on as they hit the road in April. Not clear if this is going to be part of another album or what's happening, but the single is coming out January 29th. Destruction has released their new single, Angst, from their upcoming album, The Birth of Malice, which is due out March 7th on Napalm Records. Thrash metal stalwarts that we've not talked about in long form on the show. We haven't done a lot of, I don't know if we've done any thrash outside the U.S. We've covered a lot of the big 4. We haven't done a ton of the smaller thrash bands, although we did do Sanctuary recently. But bands like Destruction, Sodom, Creator, we're long overdue for one of those episodes, so we will do that, my promise to you, in the coming weeks and months. And finally, and I think you're going to get a kick out of this, we talked about Labyrinth earlier today and their new album. Vision Divine has a pair of shows coming up later this month in Italy, in the middle of February. They've got 2 shows coming up. They just announced that the singer filling in for Ivan, who's left the band, the singer filling in on these Vision Divine shows is none other than Rob Tyrant from Labyrinth. I would lose my mind if I saw this set or this band with Rob Tyrant singing. I'm dying to hear this. And I just wanted to mention this as it was kind of timely with the Labyrinth news. Damn, if I could hear Rob Tyrant sing for Vision Divine, I would lose my mind.
I'm a little surprised they didn't go back to the well with Fabio, but he's a busy guy. And I think he's touring his solo tour / Dawn of Victory. It feels like he's kind of alternating between those 2 groups or whatever that have different lineups and what have you. But that would be very fascinating to see. I was like waiting to hear who you're going to say. I was like, is it going to be Loopy? Is it going to be Fabio? I don't think I would have guessed Rob Tyrant, although it is kind of makes sense considering he's in Olaf's other band. So, and
they've been obviously friends for decades. So cool stuff. I hope some videos of those shows surface in due time.
I have a question for you before we talk about next week. Have you caught any of the video from the Roland Grappo's solo shows that he's been doing? He did a bunch in South America last year, and he recently announced that he's going to be doing some more, but the set list is absolutely insane. I'm gonna send this to you right now, and I just want to get like your live reaction to this set list. This is the most recent show that he did in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Oh my God. This is So I've not seen this, and I'm just looking at this. This is like the best of Roland Grappo in terms of the songs he wrote, not only for Master Plan, but a ton of Halloween shows as well. I would lose my mind. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when Portnoy went out with the guys from Haken, and they did those Shattered Fortress shows playing a bunch of Dream Theater's greatest hits. This is what Roland Grappo has done with Halloween and Master Plan, and I am there for it. I would kill to see this.
The other interesting thing too about this set list is that it actually It actually features a decent number of songs that Uli wrote. Mr. Torture, The Departed, Push. These were all Uli tunes.
Yeah.
And then like towards the back end, they play like songs that were like Waiki and Kai songs. Tale That Wasn't Right, Eagle Fly Free, I Want Out, and then they kind of finish off with some Master Plan songs. But like these are at least I've never heard of any of these musicians that he brought along. I'm guessing that they are all native to South America, and so like, you know, he just had to get there by himself, and he had his band waiting for him, kind of like Damian Wilson did at Prog Power this year. He picked out his band, and but man, this is a set list I would die for. Like what an awesome selection of songs. I thought you'd appreciate that, because that's fascinating to me. Again, I really just hope that they release some of this stuff. I would love to see a Blu-ray of this set. It's just great selection of songs, many of which you're never going to hear live again. So I feel like it would be, the time is right, but awesome stuff. Speaking of awesome stuff, we just got a promo for the new Dream Theater album, which we've had the chance to listen to once at this point. Not going to share any thoughts. All I'm going to say is tune in next week. We're going to bring you the new Dream Theater album on the podcast, which I think is really timely. It's actually kind of cool. It's the 249th episode of the show, as we hit the milestone 250. But just from a timeliness standpoint, we'd be remiss not to bring up and talk about the new Dream Theater with Mike Portnoy. It has been far too long since Portnoy's been in the band, and obviously this is going to be very scrutinized, this release, and I thought it would be timely for us to kind of talk about it together before we release a special treat for our 250th episode, and then we'll do a recap of 70,000 Tons for episode 251. So that's kind of where we're going over the next few weeks. I think people on Patreon will be getting most of these episodes early and ad-free, as they always do. So that's something to look forward to for them. And then, you know, towards the end of February, we'll resume our regularly scheduled broadcast, if you will, with your next pick. But I'm excited. This is February is going to be a fun month, not just because of 70,000 Tons, but I'm really eager to talk about this Dream Theater album. Fans have been clamoring for a long time to hear the classic lineup back together, and they finally got it. I remember when you predicted that Mike Portnoy would be rejoining Dream Theater, and then 2 days later, Mike Portnoy rejoined Dream Theater, and we had, I think, literally at that moment, said, like, I feel like that's an album that when it comes out, we need to cover immediately, because we don't typically do new releases unless we feel like it's kind of a monumental release. We did it for, when Helloween released their first album with Kisk and Kai back in the fold. So this definitely, I think, falls under that category. So I think we had always kind of known we were going to do this. It was just a matter of when the album was being released and if somebody was nice enough to send us a promo copy, and both of those things have been revealed. So that's where we're at. I'm looking forward to picking an album for mid-May of 2026. I think that's when I'm next to choose, or at least it feels that
credit
way.
to you. No, you took a back seat on this one, and I appreciate it.
No, it's all good. I kind of was pushing for us to do a special 250th episode. So in a way, I kind of am just going to give up my pick for that. And of course, like, I wouldn't want to miss, the 70,000 Tons recap. So it just, sometimes everything just kind of hits all at one time, and we always have to manage to squeeze in our requests as well. And we have one, penned in for, March. So Nops, just so you know, it's going to be yours. I'm not sure if you even remember what you requested, but you're next. So, we'll get to that when we get to that. But yeah, we actually have the next, several, weeks, mapped out. And actually I misspoke. Nops is April. Charles is March. So Charles, you're next. So yeah, lots of good stuff to look forward to. And again, like I urge you, if you are interested in listening to my 18-year-old voice, do DJ a radio show full of metal songs. Our Patreon members are listening to that. That was our January bonus episode. I got a couple of fun comments from Chris and Rich in particular. Rich especially gave me a chuckle about he would definitely have bought 18-year-old Nicchi a case of beer, and I appreciate that.
And would have gladly accepted, I'm sure.
Yeah, thanks to my roommate who was a year older than me. I had him to buy me beer around the time that I turned 20 or so that was nice. But Rich, I appreciate the sentiment, and thank you for listening. And I thought that at least a couple of people might get a kick out of that. So yeah, that's just one of the bonus features that our Patreon members get. I mean, I don't know if you'd consider that a bonus in your life or not, but it's there.
I like it. Well, this is fun. I'm going to go back and listen to the new Dream Theater. I don't know about you. It'll be a nice palate cleanser no, I'm just kidding. I did enjoy it this week. Enjoy the week, my friend, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Sounds good. I'm going to probably spend the next 3.5 hours editing this episode, so.
Take care, bud.
Later.